their cozy campsite in the heart of Glacier Pines National Park, Billy and his mom gazed up at the tallest mountain either of them had ever seen. It rose high into the evening sky, its snowy peak catching the last golden rays of the setting sun. To Billy, the snow looked like a giant swirl of vanilla ice cream, perched right on top of the world. He licked his lips, imagining what it would taste like. The air was already growing crisp, brushing cool against his cheeks. Soon, he'd tuck into his bright yellow sleeping bag inside their tent and drift off into a deep, happy sleep. But first, it was hot chocolate time. This was a tradition for Billy and his mom whenever they camped. It made the night feel special and warm, even in the wild outdoors. Billy loved watching his mom swirl cocoa powder into hot water with the back of her spoon. Even better was when they had marshmallows, soft, fluffy ones that melted into gooey puddles on top. It was Billy's job to fetch water for the cocoa. Their cooking pot was scratched and dented from years of use, brown on the outside and silver on the inside, and Billy was proud to carry it like an explorer on a mission. The lake was a little walk down the hill, not far, but just far enough to feel like a real adventure. As he trudged down the pine needle-covered trail, Billy's legs felt tired but strong. They had hiked most of the day to get here, and though his muscles ached, it was a good ache, the kind that made you feel brave and tough. Birds chirped as they fluttered back to their nests, and squirrels raced up tree trunks, clutching acorns and pine cones in their tiny hands. Everyone in the forest, it seemed, was getting ready for the night. When Billy reached the water's edge, the forest grew quiet. The mountain loomed across the lake, its reflection painting a perfect, upside-down mirror image on the surface. Billy stepped gently toward the shore, trying not to break the picture with a ripple. He bent down, dipping the pot slowly into the still water. As the cold lake water slipped into the pot, Billy remembered something his mom had told him. When we're careful and kind with nature, it invites us in. He hadn't understood that when she first said it, but now, watching the mountain and the lake, he started to feel what she meant. He closed his eyes and imagined himself as the mountain, strong, steady, and calm. Billy breathed in, long and deep, holding it like he was holding time itself, then let it out in a slow, thoughtful sigh. That's how a mountain would breathe, he thought. Suddenly something moved, a flash of silver near the surface, a rainbow trout. It poked its shiny nose out of the water, sending ripples across the lake. The mountain's reflection wobbled and danced, and startled, Billy let go of the pot. With a soft splash, it floated out onto the lake like a tiny metal boat. Billy's eyes widened. Oh no! He stepped back, looking around for help. A few large rocks, a mossy old tree, bent over the shore, like it was whispering secrets to the water. He took a deep breath again, just like the mountain. And that's when he heard it. A breeze tickled his ear, and in it, he thought he heard a voice, soft and deep, like the mountain itself. It's okay, Billy. Look under the tree. He blinked. Had he imagined it? Still, he turned to the twisted tree, pulling aside a curtain of moss. Tucked underneath, like it had been waiting for him, was a small, green rowboat. Its seat was painted bright apple green, the wood smooth and sturdy. It felt magical, like it had always been meant for him. Billy hesitated. His legs were tired, and dragging the boat into the water wouldn't be easy. But he thought of the hot chocolate waiting. of the marshmallows and the warm tent, and his mom's smile. That was all the motivation he needed. He pulled the boat down over the smooth stones, grunting with effort, and pushed it into the lake. Climbing aboard, he grabbed the wooden oars and began to row. The lake shimmered in the fading light. Dragonflies zipped across the surface, their wings glinting like tiny mirrors. Fish swam lazily beneath the boat, their scales sparkling like treasure. Billy couldn't tell which fish had startled him, but he wasn't upset. In fact, he felt thankful. Without that fish, he might never have found the boat. He leaned down and whispered into the water, "Thank you." Stroke by stroke, the little rowboat slid across the lake, circling gently toward the pot. When Billy got close enough, he lifted the oars, letting them drip quietly into the water. Reaching over the side, he stretched his arm toward the floating pot. The cold water sent a shiver up his sleeve, but he smiled through it, his fingers brushing the metal. Carefully, he pulled it back into the boat. Inside the pot, the mountain shimmered again, its reflection bright and still. Billy sat for a moment, watching it. The rocky cliffs, the trees, the snowy vanilla peak. He set the pot on the seat beside him and began the slow paddle back. He didn't rush. Each stroke was smooth and quiet. The sky above was turning cotton candy pink and soft orange like a watercolor painting. He smiled. The mountain didn't hurry, and tonight, neither would he. When the rowboat bumped gently against the shore, Billy hauled it back beneath the mossy tree, just where he'd found it. His mom always said to leave things better than you found them. He gave the boat a gentle pat on its green seat. "Thanks, buddy," he whispered. Then, pot in hand, he climbed the trail back to camp. The mountain watched him from the sky, silver now under the rising moon. His mom waved as he returned, and he saw the camp stove already flickering to life. She lit it with a match, and soon steam curled from the pot as it sat above the flame. Billy told her all about the fish, the pot, the boat, and the whisper of the mountain. She listened, smiling as she stirred the cocoa. The hot chocolate was perfect, dark and sweet with marshmallows puffed on top. They sipped it together under the night sky, wrapped in sweaters and silence. The mountain stood tall above them, glowing with pride. When the mugs were empty and the stars were bright, Billy zipped into his tent, snuggling deep into his sleeping bag. He was warm, safe, and full of cocoa and wonder. Before sleep took him, he took one last deep breath, held it for just a moment, and sighed like the mountain. "Good night," he whispered, and the mountain, standing guard above glacier pines, seemed to whisper back. The next morning, sunlight peeked through the trees and spilled into the bright yellow tent, waking Billy with a warm kiss on his cheek. He blinked a few times, still snuggled deep in his sleeping bag. The air smelled like pine needles, fresh dirt, and something sweet. His mom was making oatmeal on the camp stove with cinnamon and apples. "Good morning, Sleepy Bear," she said as he unzipped the tent and stepped outside, rubbing his eyes. "Morning," Billy yawned, stretching his arms toward the sky. The mountain still stood tall in the distance, its vanilla snow cap sparkling in the morning light. He smiled at it like it was an old friend. After breakfast, Billy and his mom packed their hiking packs with snacks, water bottles, and their explorer journal, a special notebook where they wrote down everything they saw in the wild. Billy drew pictures too, Birds, plants, funny-shaped rocks, and once a squirrel that looked like it had a mustache. Today's plan was to explore a trail that looped around Blueberry Hill, a rounded little rise in the forest that overlooked Misty River. It wasn't as tall as the mountain, but it was supposed to have one of the best views in the whole park. Billy was excited. He tightened the straps on his back and set off with a spring in his step, hiking beside his mom through the dappled light of the woods. The trail was soft and springy underfoot, covered in pine needles and fallen leaves. Birds chirped from high branches. Somewhere far off, a woodpecker tapped like a tiny drum. Billy kept an eye out for anything unusual to add to the Explorer Journal. He spotted a ladybug on a fern and a pine cone with holes chewed by squirrels. Then, as they rounded a bend, Billy stopped. There was a small clearing up ahead, and right in the middle of it stood something strange. An old signpost, weathered by rain and sun. The words carved into it were faded, but still just readable. Whispering Woods, shortcut to Echo Rock. Billy looked up at his mom, eyebrows raised. "I've never heard of Echo Rock," he said. "Neither have I," his mom replied. "Maybe it's a secret spot." Billy's heart fluttered a little. A secret spot. That sounded like an invitation. "Can we take the shortcut?" His mom smiled. "Sure. Let's see where it leads." They stepped off the main trail and into the narrower path marked by the sign. The trees grew thicker here, older, and their trunks were covered in moss so green it glowed. The sunlight filtered in softly, turning the whole forest into a quiet, magical world. And it really did whisper. At first, Billy thought it was just the wind, but the more they walked, the more he noticed that the sounds around them weren't random. Leaves rustled in rhythm. Branches creaked softly like an old song. He could almost hear voices, not scary ones, but curious, playful voices, like the forest was trying to tell them something. "Do you hear that?" Billy whispered. His mom nodded slowly. "I think the woods are talking." Billy didn't say anything after that. He just listened, and as they walked, something strange and wonderful happened. Every time they paused, by a log, or a twisted root, or a hollow tree, Billy felt like they were being guided. Not pushed or pulled, just gently encouraged, as if the forest wanted to show them something. Then they came to a break in the trees, and there it was. Echo Rock. It wasn't huge, but it stood proudly at the edge of a bluff, smooth and flat, like it had been placed there on purpose. Below it, the land dropped off into a wide valley filled with trees and winding trails. Far beyond, the great mountain stood watch, wearing its snowy cap. Billy ran up to the rock and climbed on top. "Hello," he shouted. "Hello," the valley answered, his voice bouncing back to him. He laughed. "I'm Billy." "Billy," came the reply. Then, just to test it, he yelled, "Thank you, mountain." And to his surprise, the echo didn't come back right away. Instead, the wind stirred through the trees behind him, wrapping around his shoulders like a hug. He heard it again, that same soft voice as the night before. Only this time, it wasn't just a whisper. "You're welcome, Billy." He froze, blinking. His mom looked up from her spot by the trail. "Did you say something?" Billy shook his head slowly. "I think the mountain talked to me." She raised her eyebrows, but not in disbelief. She smiled like she understood. Sometimes the world speaks when we're quiet enough to hear it. Billy turned back to the mountain. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Instead, he sat down on the rock and opened the Explorer journal, sketching the view. The great peak in the distance, the valley below, and Echo Rock where he sat. He added a note in big letters. The mountain whispered again today. They stayed there a while, sharing crackers and apple slices, letting the afternoon drift by like a lazy cloud. When they finally hiked back to camp, the sun was already sinking, painting the forest gold. At camp, they made dinner over the fire, grilled cheese sandwiches in their camping pan, with the cheese all melty and the bread perfectly crisp. Afterward, they built a small fire, sitting close with their toes almost touching the flame. The stars began to appear, one by one, until the sky looked like a giant blackboard sprinkled with glitter. Billy leaned back against his mom's shoulder. "Do you think the mountain talks to other kids too?" "I think it talks to anyone who listens," she said softly. He liked that idea. The mountain wasn't just big and cold and far away. It was wise. It watched over them. It whispered to him. That night, as Billy crawled into the tent, he felt even cozier than before. The tent glowed soft yellow from the lantern hanging inside. His sleeping bag felt warmer. The stars above twinkled a little brighter. Before closing his eyes, he took one more mountain breath. In, hold, sigh, and whispered, "Good night, Echo Rock." And the wind, dancing softly through the pine trees, seemed to whisper back. The morning after their adventure to Echo Rock, Billy awoke with a spark of excitement already glowing inside him. His pillow was warm from sleep, but the rest of the tent was cool and fresh with early mountain air. He unzipped the flap and peeked outside. Mist curled over the forest floor like a gentle wave, and the great mountain stood in the distance, still and silent as ever, its snowy peak glowing softly in the golden sunrise. His mom was already outside, tying her hiking boots and sipping from a steaming mug. She looked up and grinned. "We've got a big day ahead," she said. Billy stepped out barefoot, the earth cold under his toes. "What are we doing today?" "Something new," she said, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. It was old and crinkly, a hand-drawn map. "A ranger gave me this years ago. It shows an old trail, the Fern Loop. It's not on the official map anymore, but some people say it leads to an ancient grove of trees that have been around for hundreds of years." Billy's eyes widened, like tree grandparents. His mom laughed. "Exactly like that." They packed quickly. Peanut butter sandwiches, water bottles, granola bars, and of course the Explorer journal. Billy also tucked a small compass into his jacket pocket, a gift from his grandpa that he called the True Pointer. They set out as the sun climbed higher, stepping off the known path and onto the narrow, forgotten trail, marked with a stone and a weathered wooden stake. The fern loop began gently enough, winding through thick clusters of ferns so tall that they brushed Billy's shoulders. The air smelled like wet moss and bark, and drops of dew sparkled on every leaf. As they walked deeper, the forest changed. The trees grew taller and farther apart. Thick vines hung from high branches like green ropes. Mushrooms, fat and colorful, popped up along the ground, some shaped like umbrellas, others like pancakes. The ferns swayed even when the air was still, and Billy had the strange sense that the forest was watching them, but not in a scary way, more like it was curious. Then they saw it, the ancient grove. The trees there were enormous, wide enough that 5 grown-ups holding hands couldn't wrap around them. Their bark was dark and rugged, and their roots stuck out from the ground like frozen waves. Moss grew on every trunk, and soft light filtered through the high canopy, making the air shimmer green and gold. Billy stepped quietly between two roots as thick as logs and looked up. The trees seemed to hum, not with sound exactly, but with age and power and peace. He could feel it in his chest. He looked over at his mom, who had stopped walking and was staring up, with her mouth slightly open. "Do you feel that?" he whispered. She nodded slowly. "It's like they remember everything." Billy walked up to the closest tree and gently placed his hand against its bark. It felt warm, rough, but warm, like skin touched by sun. He leaned his head against it and closed his eyes. For a moment, everything was still. Then, just like by the lake, just like at Echo Rock, he heard the voice again, soft and low, deeper than the roots, higher than the branches. "You're on the right path, Billy." His eyes flew open. "Did you hear that?" he asked, turning. But his mom was on the other side of the grove, sketching a leaf in the Explorer journal. Billy looked back at the tree. "Thank you," he whispered. The wind rustled the leaves in answer. As they wandered deeper into the grove, Billy found other signs. Stones stacked carefully into towers, carved symbols in the bark, a circle of feathers arranged around a tree stump. It all felt ancient, like they were walking through the memories of the forest itself. Then, near the heart of the grove, Billy saw something that made his heart skip. A door. Not a modern door with a knob and frame, but a wooden slab built into the base of a giant tree. It had a handle made of twisted root and tiny carvings all over it, spirals, stars, and a single mountain shape at the top. He reached out but stopped just short of touching it. His mom appeared behind him. "Should we?" Billy nodded slowly. "I think it's meant for us." They opened the door together. It creaked, heavy but smooth, revealing a hollow inside the tree. Not dark or dusty, but glowing. Tiny specks of light drifted in the air like fireflies. On the floor of the hollow sat a small wooden box with a lid carved like waves and stars. Billy opened it. Inside was a stone, round, smooth, pale blue, like the sky just before morning. He picked it up and held it in his palm. It was cool to the touch, but as he stared at it, he felt warmth bloom in his chest, a feeling of purpose, of connection. There was also a note etched into a square of bark. It read, "To the listener, keep this stone. When the time comes, it will show you the way." The mountain. Billy looked at his mom. It was waiting for us. She nodded, eyes wide. "I think it's part of the story." Billy placed the stone gently into the front pocket of his pack, zipped it tight, and closed the wooden box. Together they shut the tree door and stepped back. The grove felt even more alive now, like it had shared one of its secrets, and was happy to have done so. On the way back to camp, Billy felt different, stronger somehow, not in his muscles, but inside, like he had been chosen for something, even if he didn't know what yet. They made it back just as the first stars appeared in the sky. Dinner was quiet, peaceful. Afterward, they lay in their sleeping bags under the stars, watching the sky turn silver. Billy reached into his pack and touched the stone once more. He didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing for sure. The next day began with rain. Not a wild thunderstorm, but a gentle, misty drizzle that painted the forest in silvery light and made every leaf sparkle. Billy sat under the wide flap of their tent, his knees tucked up to his chest, watching raindrops dance on the surface of their cooking pot. which had been left out overnight. He liked the sound the rain made, like tiny fingers tapping softly on the roof of the world. His mom handed him a warm mug of tea. "We'll wait it out a little," she said. "Then maybe we can head up to Pinecrest Ridge." Billy nodded, but his thoughts were far away. All night he had dreamed about the glowing tree in the ancient grove, about the wooden box, and most of all, the sky-colored stone, now tucked safely into the side pocket of his backpack. He took it out and held it in his palm. The stone was still cool and smooth, like a perfect skipping rock. But as he stared at it, something new caught his eye. A faint shimmer, like fog inside glass, moving beneath the surface. It reminded him of the mountain snow, or the clouds that sometimes wrapped around the peak like a scarf. Just then, the stone grew warm. Not hot, not burning, but gently, softly warm. Billy gasped and looked up. The clouds had parted above them, just enough to reveal the mountaintop, glowing in a beam of sunlight. It was like the mountain was looking right at him. A breeze rustled the trees, and with it, he heard the mountain's voice again. Clearer this time, stronger. Follow the ridge. The path begins where the stones sing. Billy stood, his mug forgotten in the grass. He turned to his mom, eyes wide. "I think the mountain wants to show us something today." She studied his face, and for a moment he thought she might tell him he imagined it. But instead, she smiled, pulled her raincoat tighter, and said, "Then we'd better listen." By late morning, the rain had thinned to a mist, and the sky opened up in soft shades of gray and blue. They packed lightly, just a snack, water, the Explorer Journal, and of course, the Bluestone. The trail to Pinecrest Ridge twisted through old cedar trees and patches of wild flowers, still heavy with raindrops. The climb was steep in places, but Billy didn't feel tired. He felt pulled forward by something just out of view, like the forest itself was guiding his steps. At the top of the ridge, they found a long, flat outcrop of stone overlooking the valley below. Billy walked to the edge and gasped. There, laid out like a secret message, were rows of stones, gray, flat, and round, spanning the entire length of the ridge. They were placed in long, winding patterns that curled like rivers or vines. Some were stacked into spirals. Others formed stars. Billy crouched beside one and tapped it with his finger. A soft hum filled the air. His mom knelt beside another and pressed her palm to it. "They vibrate," she whispered, "like they're alive." Billy remembered the mountain's voice, where the stones sing. He pulled out the blue stone and held it above the strange rock pattern. The stone pulsed with warmth. Then, before their eyes, a shimmer spread across the rocks, like morning frost melting in reverse. Lines of soft blue light began to glow, tracing through the stone paths like glowing ink. The patterns shifted, slowly transforming into a map. Billy and his mom stepped back as the entire ridge lit up beneath them. The map showed the mountain at the top. Below it, winding through valleys and forests, were tiny glowing symbols. Waterfalls, trees, caves, even a circle that looked like the ancient grove. One symbol stood out, pulsing brighter than the rest, a spiral made of leaves. Billy pointed. "That's where we need to go next." As the light faded, the stones returned to their usual gray, but the path was marked now, etched into Billy's memory. He drew the map quickly in the Explorer Journal, capturing every detail he could before it disappeared completely. They sat for a while looking down at the valley. The mountain, half covered in clouds, loomed above everything. It wasn't just a mountain anymore. It was a guide, a keeper of stories. Billy touched the stone again. "Why me?" he whispered, and in the wind, he thought he heard the answer. "Because you listen." On the way back down the ridge, Billy kept noticing things he hadn't seen before. Clusters of berries nestled under bushes, a rapid path through the moss, tiny mushrooms shaped like stars. Everything seemed brighter, quieter, more alive. At camp, they made a simple dinner, rice and beans in a pan over the fire, and ate it sitting side by side on a fallen log. The forest felt like it was leaning in, listening. That night, after brushing his teeth with cold lake water and zipping himself into his sleeping bag, Billy stared up at the dark canvas of the tent ceiling. He felt the weight of the stone in the pocket of his sweatshirt, right over his heart. "I think we're on a quest," he whispered, his mom's voice soft from the other side of the tent. "I think so too." Before falling asleep, Billy took one last mountain breath. In, hold, sigh. He dreamed of glowing trails, singing stones, and a path that led not just to the mountain's peak, but to something waiting inside it. The next morning came with a golden sunrise and a quiet sense of purpose in the air. Billy woke early, before the birds had even started to sing, and slipped out of the tent while the world was still hushed. The mountain looked closer than ever, its snowy crown glowing in the warm light, as if it had been waiting all night for him to wake. Today was the day. The glowing trail on the ridge had revealed a final destination, the spiral of leaves, a place marked in soft blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Billy didn't know what he would find there, but he knew, deep in his chest, that it mattered. He sat by the campfire, watching the flames flicker, while his mom stirred a pot of oatmeal with dried cherries. She looked over and smiled gently. "Are you ready?" she asked. Billy nodded. "I think I've been ready since the first whisper." They packed quickly and quietly. Water, food, the Explorer Journal, and of course the blue stone. The trail from the ridge wound through unfamiliar forest now, deeper and older than anything they'd walked before. The ground was soft with moss, and vines hung low from the trees like curtains. The sun filtered down in golden beams, painting everything with a quiet magic.